Okay, we're in 5.1. We're looking at the first poem. It's Planting a Sequoia. So find that in your packet if you would. And I want to read it first out loud. That is really the most important thing I think to do when you start looking at a new poem. And as I'm reading it, you can start to think about what questions we can answer here in terms of SCASI. So for the first one, we're looking at setting, right? S stands for setting. And then the second, C, characters. What do we know about the speaker? What do we know about other characters involved? A is action, so what's actually happening in the poem. And then we're going to skip that second S for now, come back to it later, and think about I, ideas. All right, so let me read it to you once and try to just get a sense of where we are, when we are, and what kind of changes we have from stanza to stanza as we focus on the S, the first S, setting. Planting a sequoia. All afternoon, my brothers and I have worked in the orchard, digging this hole, laying you into it, carefully packing the soil. Rain blackened the horizon, but cold winds kept it over the Pacific, and the sky above us stayed the dull gray of an old year coming to an end. In Sicily, a father plants a tree to celebrate his first son's birth, an olive or a fig tree, a sign that the earth has one more life to bear. I would have done the same, proudly laying new stock into my father's orchard, a green sapling rising among the twisted apple boughs, a promise of new fruit in other autumns. But today we kneel in the cold planting you, our native giant, defying the practical custom of our fathers, wrapping in your roots a lock of hair, a piece of an infant's birth cord, all that remains above earth of a firstborn son, a few stray atoms brought back to the elements. We will give you what we can, our labor and our soil, water drawn from the earth when the skies fail, nights scented with ocean fog, days softened by the circuit of bees. We plant you in the corner of the grove, bathed in western light, a slender shoot against the sunset. And when our family is no more, all of his unborn brothers dead, every niece and nephew scattered, the house torn down, his mother's beauty ashes in the air, I want you to stand among strangers, all young and ephemeral to you, silently keeping the secret of your birth. The poet is Dana Goya, and we have one footnote here telling us what a sequoia is. A sequoia is a giant coniferous tree. And another hint that would have been helpful to include here, I took this from a previous paper one exam from IB, would have been that this is also the native tree of California. Okay, so if we're talking setting, I'm going to try to use my features here from Screen Pal. Let's see if they work to type. So what do we know about setting? Let's give all of the setting things the same color, and we'll see if I can choose my color green. I'm going to choose green. All right. So in that first stanza, what, I'm not sure how to get rid of that orange box, sorry. What jumps out at you as telling us where and when we are, this setting? Well, first of all, we've got all afternoon. My brothers and I have worked in the orchard. So we know exactly where and when we are. This is the end of an afternoon in an orchard. Digging this hole, laying you into it, carefully packing the soil. Rain blackened the horizon. So that's a little bit more about where and when we are. But cold winds kept it over the Pacific. So there's rain nearby, but it's not close enough to cause any problems for them because it's over the Pacific. So if it's over the Pacific, if the rain is over the Pacific, then that must mean that we're pretty close to the Pacific Ocean, right? So we have all kinds of information about setting here. The sky above us stayed the dull gray of an old year coming to an end. We also know when in the year it is. It's towards the end of the year. Okay, so this is what's happening, or what has just happened, this stanza, and it's what, where and when we are as the speaker is describing things. The second stanza, you'll notice, is a little bit different because of the first sentence. In Sicily, a father plants a tree to celebrate his first son's birth, an olive or a fig tree, a sign that the earth has one more life to bear. So we have changed setting here, haven't we? In Sicily, we're told how a father plants a tree to celebrate his first son's birth. All right, let's continue on. I would have done the same, proudly laying new stock into my father's orchard, a green sapling rising among the twisted apple boughs, a promise of new fruit in other autumns. But the key here is I would have done, right? So the speaker is not in Sicily, not planting a new tree for his first son's birth. He's saying that this is the what would have happened, right? It's a hypothetical, but it's not what is happening. So all of these different distinctions are important. The third stanza, how else can we look for setting but today? Oh, that but word is helpful, right? So the but shows contrast. So we're not in Sicily planting this tree. Instead, what are we doing? We kneel in the cold, planting you, our native giant, defying the practical custom of our fathers. Wrapping in your roots a lock of hair, a piece of infant's birth cord, all that remains above earth of a firstborn son, a few stray atoms brought back to the elements. The next stanza, we will give you. So now we're in the future tense. What we can, our labor and our soil, water drawn from the earth when the skies fail, nights scented with the ocean fog. There's some setting details there. Days softened by the circuit of bees. We plant you in the corner of the grove. Here's some more detail about the setting. Bathed in the western light, a slender shoot against the sunset. Any other details in the last stanza? And when our family is no more, all of his unborn brothers dead, every niece and nephew scattered, the house torn down, his mother's beauty ashes in the air, I want you to stand among strangers, all young and ephemeral to you, silently keeping the secret of your birth. That last stanza is a little bit different, not a lot of details about setting. Okay, so what could we say now about the setting? Where and when are we? I wish I could get rid of, I do believe I figured out a way to get, no, maybe not. See if, I'm learning how to use this still. Okay, so what do we know? We know that we are at the end of an afternoon in an orchard near the Pacific Ocean. We also know the season. It's probably autumn because of this here, this reference here, other autumns, and the year coming to an end. So all of these things are explicit pieces of information, literal, non-debatable pieces of information that we have. Okay, I think that is probably good for that one. Now, how do I make all of this show up for us? Okay, so it's the end of the afternoon in an orchard near the Pacific Ocean in the autumn. So you might jot that down in your notes right now. Okay, the next thing is characters. What would you highlight about characters? Let's take a look here. Let me use yellow for this one. My brothers and I, probably, you would highlight. What else? What do we know about the eye? There's also at least one other character who's mentioned. Did you catch it without a name? You. Right? The you is mentioned a couple times. You, your roots. And then we have this character mentioned as well, a firstborn son. In the second to the last stanza, we've got a we pronoun, changed from I to a we and our. We got another you there. And a you here. And then we've got our family, his unborn brothers, niece and nephew, mother, and then the you again. Take a moment and see if you can determine who the you is. It's a little tricky, but these are the kinds of clues that you want to be looking for as you are making sense of poetry and looking at these literal, non-debatable things like who the characters are and what we know about them. So you take a moment, pause the video, and try to determine who the you is. Okay, every time I type something up, all my highlighting disappears. So I'm working on learning how to make this work. Sorry. What did you notice? Anybody come up with this? You is a sequoia tree. How do we know that? Well, if we look at all of the yous, the first one, laying you into it. So we're told in that first sentence that the speaker and his brothers have worked in the orchard digging a hole, laying you into it. So they're laying something in a hole, carefully packing the soil. So that sounds like they're, packing it. They're placing the dirt back over the tree after it's planted. And then in the second stanza, we have this hypothetical where in Sicily a father plants a tree to celebrate his first son's death. I would have done the same. So he is doing something similar, but it's not exactly the same. As we get to the third stanza, we start understanding what's different. We kneel in the cold planting you, our native giant. So the you is the native giant, and that is the sequoia tree, the native giant tree of California. Defying the practical custom of our fathers, wrapping in your roots. So here's another clue that the yew is a tree because it has roots, right? And we will give you what we can, our labor and our soil. That's what a tree needs, right? Water drawn from the earth when the skies fail. We plant you in the corner of the grove, bathed in western light, a slender shoot against the sunset. So the yew we can see is a sequoia tree. Right now it's a slender shoot because it's young. It's just been planted. It's going to grow up and be huge, and that's what he mentions in the last stanza. When our family is no more, all of the people in their family will be dead. I want you to stand among strangers, all young and ephemeral. Ephemeral is not long lasting or not lasting forever. to you, silently keeping the secret of your birth. And so, since the sequoia tree lives to be hundreds of years old, it will outlive the speaker, his family, and everyone he knew. And so he has this kind of wish for the future, that in the future, when all of his family members are dead, this tree will live on. All right. Now, if you didn't get that the U is a sequoia tree, you're okay. I just want to show you that oftentimes the literal information is in a poem. We just have to dig deep for it. We have to look for those clues. And so this is a lesson to kind of help you understand how oftentimes the clues are right there in front of us. And like I said, we've got to dig deep. Okay, what do we know about the speaker? We know that the speaker is the I, right? And we know that he has been digging the hole and planting the sequoia. Why is it that he's been doing that? He says that he would have rather gone to Sicily to plant a new tree, because that is the practical custom of our fathers when what happens? When you're celebrating a first son's birth. But what happened to the speaker's son? Can you figure it out? Pause the video. It's in there. See if you can figure out what happened to the speaker's son and why he is planting this sequoia in California instead of a fruit-bearing tree in Sicily. Did you figure it out? Sad, right? The speaker is the father of a firstborn son, but his son didn't live. Now, how the heck did you figure that out, Cope, you're asking? It's actually there. Let's take a look. It's down here when he's contrasting what he would have done to what he's actually doing. But today we kneel in the cold, planting you, our native giant, defying the practical custom of our fathers, wrapping in your roots a lock of hair, a piece of an infant's birth cord, all that remains above earth of a firstborn son, a few stray atoms brought back to the elements. So here we see that it's not just the tree that's being planted, but he's also burying pieces of this child who didn't survive. A lock of hair and part of the birth cord. How do we know that the child didn't survive? It's this line here, because that's all that remains above earth of a firstborn son. Meaning that this firstborn son has been buried. And the only thing that the father has is a lock of hair and part of the birth cord that is often saved at a birth. So, sad story here, but now we've figured it out, right? We've figured out at least who these characters are. Okay, what about the action? The action of the poem. What is actually happening? Let's take a look at that, and maybe we can use blue for that. Oh, they're not giving me blue as an option. I wanted blue. I'm going to use purple instead. Okay, so we've talked about some of this already. Brothers and I have worked in the orchard, digging the hole, laying you into it, carefully packing the soil. They would have done this, but instead they're doing this. They're kneeling, and they are wrapping in the roots pieces of the child who died, and they are planting the sequoia. He also says, we'll take care of you, right? We'll give you what we can. And when our family is no more, he also at the very end has this last action. He wants the sequoia to stand, silently keeping the secret of its birth. Okay, so you could type that up. The action here is, let's see if it'll let me switch to text. I'm learning, folks. I'm doing it. So the action is that the speaker with his brothers is planting the sequoia tree with pieces of his firstborn son who died. And in this way, it becomes a kind of a burial, even though that son has already been buried, as we noticed in line 14. And it's a kind of memorial, right, that this tree will live on. Even after he and everyone he knows dies. Okay. The last thing is ideas. Sometimes you can actually look for places in the poem where ideas are surfacing. And let's see if I can switch to a different color. I'm going to do pink for that. I think we certainly see some of the ideas in these last couple of lines, maybe the whole last stanza, that what he desires for the tree, the fact that what would have been done and what he, would have wanted to do, but that he can't because of the child's death. So we could type that up as maybe something like this. The father is grieving for the death of his son and so plants a tree to remember him. But rather than the custom of his father or ancestors, it is a sequoia tree. A tree that doesn't have any fruit and whose only purpose really is to live, grow, and be there silently in the future. Okay, thanks for reading Planting a Sequoia.